Good morning, welcome to this micrographics webinar. We will begin shortly. We're just waiting for any more people to join. Alright, today's webinar topic is Autodesk Vault, the new look thin client for Vault 2022 edition. Okay, my name is Irshad Hanif. I'm an application engineer with Micrographics, and I'll be guiding you through the technicalities and taking you on a tour. So what is the purpose of today's webinar? Well, we basically want to take a quick tour of Vault Professional's revamped thin client interface and features. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Vault Professional and its thin client offering, but it has changed as from the 2022 edition. So we will be discussing that today. Let's take a look at our agenda. We're going to have a brief introduction for those who are new to all of this, explain what it is, what it's all about, how you can access it, who has access to it, and also there are a few changes that Autodesk have made. So we will discuss the changes to the thin client offering. Then we're going to take a look at what's new in thin client 2022. We'll do a very quick interface tour, and then we'll look at specifics regarding files, items, and change orders. Right. We'll also discuss a little bit about the viewer. So Autodesk makes use of a different viewing tool, and that can be important as well as helpful for your company workflow. And lastly, we'll take a look at the few administrator settings that need to be set up in order to further granulate and add settings to your workflow. So firstly, about me. My name is Irshad Hanif. I'm an application engineer with Micrographics. I have about 8 years of experience, primarily in the mechanical engineering field, and my main fields of software would be AutoCAD, Inventor, and Fusion 360, although I also do a lot of CAM, which is computer aided machining, FEA, design and modeling, as well as stuff like this, which regards PDMs and product data management. I am also an Autodesk certified professional, which means I've written exams to certify my knowledge and be equipped at the right level to be able to do this. So, as stated, let's do a quick introduction for new users. I've basically listed out a few FAQs, or frequently asked questions, so that anyone who is joining this webinar who isn't aware of thin client and the feature sets, we will just go through these quick list of questions. So firstly, what is thin client? Thin client is a read-only access to your Vault. So if you have a Vault installed in your company, you can just use the thick client, which is the installation package, and of course you'll need a license for that, but you can also just use your browser to access the files if you set up your thin client. Right? Now that begs the question, is it available with any version of Vault? So of course, you know, there's Vault Basic, there's Vault Workgroup, and so on, and Vault Professional, all of that. The answer is no. Right? And we'll get into more detail on that in the next slide, but it is only available with Vault Professional now. Okay. Do I need a license? The answer is no. Like I said, all you need is a web browser, and you can have an unlimited amount of people who have access to this, as long as the administrator has set up rights and permissions for them in the Vault software itself. Right? How many users? Well, the number doesn't really matter. It really depends on your server and your capability, but lots of people can access it. So if you have many users in non-engineering departments, yep, they're more than welcome to get this. Of course, it is read-only. You want to have your CAD engineering office with a seat of Vault because they need to interact with the Vault rather than just read stuff off it. Right? And how do I set it up? Well, we'll take a look at that in the next few slides, but it's basically you've got to install the Vault client and you'll access it from a browser by going to a specific URL. So that was my quick FAQ for new users who are unfamiliar with it. If you look on the right, I have an image there that basically shows you the new interface look. So this is what you will actually see in your web browser if you access the thin client. Right? So a bit more on that. The first point from the previous slide. It provides browser-based access to all your vaults. So remember, you can choose which vault you want to access. Right? It's a read-only access for viewing and sharing. Again, just to reiterate that you cannot interact with the data. You cannot go in and change its state, but you can view a certain history and design specs for a particular file or design. Right? A list of other things that you can do from the browser. You can view associated data with individual Vault objects. Okay. You can preview inventor files and other supported file types. So because of AnyCAD and obviously inventor files, you know we have DWFs. So those 3D models can actually be viewed in the browser. No additional software, not even design review is needed. Right? You can view records and attachments in change orders. So previously you would have your change orders and you would use a thick client. A person with a Vault seat would have to go and look at it and be notified of it by email and then go into that change order and look at the records and attachments. You can look at it here directly from the browser. It's got a simplified interface now, and it's got a common interface between all files, change orders, and items. A new thing here is also you can share links that you open in the Vault client, and you can share it such that it opens in the Vault thick client or on the desktop or in the thin client itself. So you've got multiple ways to share something that you find on the Vault with other people. Right? And lastly, you can download copies of the file directly onto your computer. Of course, this is subject to a few settings of how the administrator sets that up. At this point, I need to discuss the changes to product access. Autodesk has changed their product offering with respect to Vault Thin Client. Okay, from the 2022 version, and this is officially from Autodesk, Vault Thin Client is only available on Vault Professional. Right? No license is required, and the Vault Thin Client is read-only. So there's no variant as they were before, where you had some with Vault Office license and some with Vault Workgroup, and some could interact and some couldn't. They've taken away all of that. They've just went straight to Vault Thin Client on Vault Professional only, and it is read only. Right? The last little point I put there was that Vault Client does not consume any license, so it can be used regardless of the number of seats. And that becomes really handy, like I was saying, for non-CAD users in multiple departments. You may have an accounting or a purchasing department, as well as an admin or a management department that requires access to things like items or change orders. You may even want people on the factory floor who are manufacturing the stuff to have access to just the latest versions or the latest revisions, and that can all be set up as well. So installing the thin client, it's the same as before, so nothing has changed with the 2022 release. You're going to launch the Vault Professional server installation. You're going to go to select Tools and Utilities, and you're gonna install select to install the Vault Thin client if it is not already selected. So you'll see the image on the right. That's what it should look like when it's done. Of course, this is done on the server because you have to modify the Vault Professional server installation. Right? Once you click install, like I said, it shows you that it is complete on the right, and that service can now run in the background such that anyone can access through their browser. So how does anyone access through the browser? Well, on the client side, they can simply open up any supported web browser, which is a list you can find online. It's basically all the common browsers: Mozilla, Safari, Chrome, Edge, or whatever it is. You're simply going to type in the URL bar. You're going to go to http:// you're going to type the server name /Autodesk TC / and then the vault name. This is important because you must know the vault name beforehand, because it creates an instance to access that vault only. If you want to access a different vault, you'll have to type in or keep a separate bookmark, for example, for that vault name. Okay, so what exactly is new in Thin Client 2022? Okay, I know I've written up a wall of text here, but we will do a live demo to see what it's all about. But just to go through the key points of what has changed. Firstly, they've changed the interface a lot. It now has a dark theme with a modern look, and the icons and the layout has changed to be more consistent overall. Before we get into the live demo, let me just give you a preview of what that looks like. Here you can see I've accessed the vault called demo, as you can see up in my URL, and this is what it looks like. You'll find that on the left I have my files and my project explorer. It's got this nice dark theme, and there's a level of consistency where I can click anything and it gives me this menu here. So this is the new UI that we're talking about, and you can expand this panel and see that it has the separate workspaces for each of these. The second new thing in Vault Thin Client 2022 is that the Autodesk Forge viewer is now directly integrated into the interface. So what is that? So basically, if you have your visualizations in your Vault, your DWF and DWFX, right? You can view any of those 3D models directly in the web browser without the need for any third party or any associated software like Design Review to be installed. Okay, this makes it a lot easier for, like I said, non-CAD users, people on the factory floor who just want to open up a browser and get stuff done or view stuff without having any license. Right. The third thing is that they've created a separate workspace for each of the main object in Vault. So for example, files, items, and change orders each have their own unique workspace, like we've just seen. And they've also made changes to what you can do with that, and it relates to how the administrator has set up your permissions. Okay. You can also have a tab there to preview a CAD file in that same browser in that view tab. So you can choose whether you want to preview the file or look at the history of it, or maybe not have some of those permissions at all. And the last new thing that they've added is quick sharing. So this again helps with the workflow in companies where you have access to the Vault as a read-only user. Right? You're on your browser and you want to send this information to someone else down the line in the company. There's a quick share button, just as we've gotten used to. It's got the little share icon. Let me just show it to you here. You'll find that any file now can be shared. Okay. You have this little share icon here, and that will allow you to create some links and either share it in the thin client or share it where it generates a link to the thick client. Right? You can copy that or you can email it directly from that menu. We'll take a look at it shortly in the live demo. Alright, files, items, and change orders. So like we said, they've separate workspaces, and you'll see what they've done is they've created tabs for each of the information and the properties defined within. So for your items and change orders, if you click on any file, you'll find that you can select multiple files in the list themselves. Right? Each of those files will bring you to the next menu, as you see on the right, which has two separate sections: user-defined properties as well as system-defined properties. Right? You also have a tab there for your history, and again, the administrator can set whether that is available or not. You also have a tab for the associated files and whether a particular item is in a change order. Right. Next thing you have is your search. Up on the top there you will see that you have your search bar, which basically mimics a basic search in Vault. So there's no advanced where you can add multiple criteria like you can do in the thick client, but there are certain codes and commands that you can add to customize or streamline your search. The other nice thing is that there is a selection box where you can choose to filter out by a particular property. I'll show you what that looks like in the live demo. But just to touch on that, it's basically, if I don't want to search for, let's say, the word assembly in my file name, I can choose not to look at the file name in my search criteria. So it's not as comprehensive or nothing similar to the advanced search in the Vault Tick client, but you can filter it using those tick boxes. Okay, and lastly, like we said, the properties come through user-defined, system-defined, as well as the history of that particular item or change order. So the last thing we need to take a look at is the administrator settings. Okay, and if you look at the if you are logged in as an administrator, that's the only time you'll see this menu, and that's the time you can change this. Obviously, a regular user would not be able to go in and change these themselves. But what can you do? Well, you can limit what people see. So, for example, to use the example again of people on the manufacturing floor, you only probably want to show them the released files, and you don't want to show them the work in progress. Right? That's simply for obvious reasons, to avoid errors. You don't want them to manufacture parts that are not ready yet, as by definition there will be a work in progress. Right? You also don't want to have access for them to see the older versions. For example, it may have jumped from version 2 to version 5 to version 7. Again, it's very easy for them to take an older one and make it according to that spec on the factory floor, and that can be really costly, so you don't want that as well. So limiting what people see is, and you can do it granularly, depending on whether it's a file, item, or change order. So you can control what that is. So either a file or an item. The next thing we can do is we can download files for local viewing. Now you'll see I put a note there that this depends on the permissions as a Vault user. So you know that in your Vault, here's my Vault Professional 2022. You know that I have permissions in my Tools, Administrators, and my Vault settings. Right? All of these life cycles and revisions, for example, or maybe changing stuff. Let's go look at something very basic. For example, if I look at a basic release process, right? we'll note that I have this tab here, security, and I say every time something's in a work in progress state, everyone can read, modify, delete, and download a file if it's in this state. Well, that matches up to what we would see in the vault. If download is allowed here for everyone in the work in progress state, then when you go to your vault in the thin client, every time I click on a particular file, I'll get this little option here to download it. Now that is because I have that permission set to everyone, right? If that was blocked in a particular state, so let's look at okay, download is allowed, but let's say you had a life cycle where this was blocked, you would not get that option to download depending on the way you set it. So it does interact with your security settings. Okay, the last thing we need we can take a look at is how we can share links. Like I said, so any link that you find on the so any file or drawing that you find on the browser from the thin client, next to the download button you will find a share button, and you can share easily directly to an email, or you can copy that link for someone else to share. And that can be done in one of two ways: either a link to the thick client, a link to the online viewer, or a link to the thin client itself if the person is a thin client user. So there's different use cases for all three, and yeah, it gives you basically the option to do that. Alright, I'm now going to go into the vault so we can take a look at it. Just give me 1 second. Alright, there we go. So now we can look at a live demo of what it actually looks like. As stated, here's my Vault Thin client, here's my files, here's my items, and here's my change orders. This mirrors exactly what I see on my Vault Professional Thick client, right? So you'll see that the way I've set it up is that I have my folders here, but there are certain things with different categories and different permissions attached to them. You'll also notice that, for example, I have some files in here, but some of them are released whereas some of them are not. If I go to my thin client, you'll find that as it stands, I as the administrator have let people on this Vault Thin client have access to everything. That is not work in progress as well as release files. I can easily change that if I go to my settings, like we just discussed from the last slide, and say, hey, I only want to show the released files, nothing more. So once I do that, it refreshes and says only those two are released as per my vault. It's those two there. So very quickly and easily we can control what people see. Right? So let's take a tour of the UI. Like I said, files, items, change orders. I also have access to my Content Center files as well as my libraries. In the Project Explorer, we'll notice that we have a series of columns, right? I can customize these columns by clicking on this little gear wheel icon, and I can choose to either show or not show something. I can even go search in the properties for things that I want to look for. Right? So for example, system defined properties, I can choose to show in it is maybe checked in or checked out or stuff like that. Right? So for example here, let's go. You'll find, oh, I've just enabled it, so here it is. The checked in column now appears there, so I can turn them on or off. Right? And so it has all of these settings for the system defined as well as the user defined properties that you would type in manually. So if you have, for example, a part number that you refer to in your company, remember, you can include this in and search for a particular part number, and we can say, and says, oh, there we go, I found that based on its part number or its file name, and this is what we need to look for. Okay. Next, we'll take a look at how the file structure works. So you can see it's following a regular file structure, and I can search using a little asterisk next to the search command to find all of that instance, even if it's not exactly as is. So for example, sometimes it might not be included, so you can put a little asterisk to it and find all of the same values. Right. If you look on the top right, you'll find that I can point where I want my the browser to look, and if there were multiple vaults here, I can select multiple vaults to log into. So currently you'll see that the vault that I'm in is the demo vault, but if I had multiple ones, I can select to go and access those as well. Right. Now again, that is dependent on the user case. So if I look at my vault and I look at administration, global settings, and my users and groups, right, you'll see that this is the user I'm currently logged in as, and because the vault I have access to is only that one, that's what I see. Perhaps if I add another one to my user, I should be able to probably need to log out and log in, but that is how I will be able to change it. So you'll see here that I manually went into localhost Autodesk then client and the name of the vault. That's how I got you. You'll also see that it has a little area here for notification, so if there's a change order or if there's something new that's been included, you'll get a little notification here, and you can see a list of all those that go through them when you log in to this menu. Okay. I also have a properties panel where I can have this permanently docked to the right. So if I click on anything, or rather I should, it brings me directly to this properties where I can open all of this, as well as the history tab, the uses tab, where used tab, whether it has an item associated, whether it's included in a change order, and of course I can view it. Now you'll notice for this one it says I am unable to view the file. That's because I do not have a DWF visualization set from the vault. So what I can do is go to this part and create one, and then it will pop up here. Again, the reason I'm showing you this is because this needs to be set up by the administrator such that it runs either on the job server or from Inventor when you check in something. So you know you have the option when you check in something to the vault, there's a little checkbox there in your dialog box to give you the option to create visualization at that exact time. Okay, so with this example, I'm going to go to my vault. Right, you'll find that I can go into my vault 2022. Just logging in. It will take a few seconds. And here we are. So that particular file is here, and just as normal it needs a visualization, so I can click on it and say update. Now for me to view it with a thick client, I would need design review. However, so here it is. However, because the Autodesk Thin Client 2022 makes use of Autodesk Forge, viewer tool, I can simply click on view here, and there we go, it loads it in directly into the browser with nothing else needed. And of course it's the same online view where I have the tools to measure, modify, as well as do other things like calibrate and measure stuff like this. Right? You'll find that in this view all the same tools that I'm familiar with from the online viewer. It's the same with items and change orders. Okay, now you'll also notice that as I was browsing through these, that I have this little checkbox. This allows me to check multiple files and make changes to them. So for example, I can select multiple like this, and I can download multiple at the same time. This allows me to be very efficient with it. So for example, if there was an entire folder that needed to be downloaded, I can simply do that or create a link to it. We'll come back to links. Let's just go through the other types of fields. So there's items and change orders. Let's look at items. Here's my assembly that I've got from one of the folders. Again, I can see for an item, I can see properties, history, associated files, as well as any change orders that it might be in. Right? So it'll give me all the data of when the deadline and stuff was set to it. In this particular case, this particular file has none. In change orders, I can see directly the state that my change order is in, and I can also view any files or attachments that I have included in it. So I can look at any attachment that may be in here. So for example, by default I created a change order for this assembly called my new assembly. It's currently on version 2, and there might be files and attachments in here, so I can look at records and find whatever files and attachments are there. You'll find again, because this is a change order, there may be multiple lines of files in here. I can click on each one and go to it and view the information, or I can directly go here and either view, download, or share the stuff. So for example, my new assembly, it has a visualization. Right now it says unable to view file, but what I can do is I can say update visualization, and it adds it to the job queue so that you don't need to insist that people with thick client or administrators manage that. You can simply go to it now and say, there it is. That didn't work for some reason. Let me just check why. I'm sure I did this. I think it wasn't created initially, so it needs to be done initially. I'll have to go back to my thick client and do it initially. But basically, that is how you would create your or navigate your change orders. Right? The last thing we can take a look at is how to share stuff. So like I said, I'll go to some random assembly. If I click on it, yeah, I can just click on the checkbox rather. I can say share. This will bring up a dialog box for me to go and either share it directly via email, so I can type multiple email addresses. So for example, someone at mgfx.ca, right? And you can see it's generating a link here, and I can send that directly to them. This will give them a link directly on the desktop. I can also give them a link via web. Again, I can type the email address, and it gives it this exact URL to come to this exact folder in the thin client. Right? So if they have a thick client, you've got a way, and if they have a thin client, you have a way. You can also just copy this and paste it in your own email as you please. Okay, so that brings us to the end of that demo. Those are the new features and the new look of Vault Thin Client 2022. Um, what? Which brings us to the Q&A portion of this webinar. If you look on the screen, you'll find that my details are listed on the bottom. So if you like what you see here and you want to know more, or you have certain questions, let's say you're a CAD administrator, you're welcome to contact me directly, or you're welcome to contact Micrographics. I'll be able to assist you with any of your queries, and I'll leave this up for a few minutes. Hopefully we can get any chat questions. Keep in mind that there is a delay between when you see this. Alright, so now that you've got our details and you've seen the webinar, I would like to thank you for joining us for the webinar. And that concludes the webinar. Thank you so much, and until next time, bye bye.